Thank you, Tom. Today I will be talking to you from the Better Speaking series on impromptu speaking. What is impromptu speaking? Well, before I tell you that, I want to say that today's speech is, or presentation, if you will, is appropriate on a couple of different levels. Number one, like I said, it's impromptu speaking. On the first level is that this speech is, in fact, pretty much an impromptu speech. It was Tuesday evening, I got a call from John. He left a message and said, Jerome, we don't have a formal speaker. I need you to step up to the plate and give a speech from the leadership manual. I didn't get that message until yesterday morning. And so it's been less than, my window of preparation has been less than 24 hours. Okay. So this is an impromptu speech. But on another level, the impromptu speech, if you think about it, here in Toastmasters, we really focus largely on the formal speech. We have our manual, which has, our CC manual has a curriculum of 10 speeches that we need to give. And they're all the formal speeches. And we might suffer from coming up with a topic. We might suffer from or struggle with the content or dealing with all the mechanics of each particular presentation. However, in impromptu speaking, this really is taking place around us, and we're interacting with it every day. Impromptu speaking is our telephone conversations. Impromptu speaking is the water cooler talk. It's the job interview. And it could be a more formal setting, but still impromptu, where maybe you're sitting in a business meeting and you get asked a question. Impromptu speaking specifically is any occasion where you're asked to speak without preparation. So that's all it is. Now, the Better Speaking manual really offered some guides or some steps to help us improve on our impromptu speaking. They gave us a formula, a five-step formula on how we can improve our impromptu speaking. Step number one was to listen. And what the manual did, or what the Better Speaking program did, is suggest that we become better listeners, active listeners. We listen to the question that might be posed to us, and we respond to that question. I mean, think about this. You may have heard this probably when you were being berated as a child, or maybe as a parent. You've used it yourself. But God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we could listen twice as much. So listening is a key strategy that we should keep in mind. Another of the strategies or the formula is the pause. And if we think about table topics, for instance, which is an area where we, within our club, utilize the impromptu speaking or train around impromptu speaking, one of the things that it suggests is that under impromptu, while we're improving, a method of improving our impromptu speaking is to, when we hear the question, pause, gather your answer before you speak. And it recommends that the pause is better than the verbal crutch. And you think about it, you could get up here and you could stand for a second and collect your thoughts after you hear your question. Or you could stand up here and you could say, the silent pause is better than the verbal crutch. A third strategy, confirm. Confirm the question. If John asks the question, Jerome, what is your favorite color? I hear you, John, my favorite color is pink. So confirm the question. And it's a strategy of making sure that you are attentive to the question that is being asked of you. The fourth strategy, or the fourth step of the formula, is called the tell. And the tell, now you're going to answer the question. want to answer it with the energy that the question or the setting requires. But you also want to make sure that you don't get off track, and you're so excited that you start talking about things that don't pertain to the question or really get away from the focused response. And then lastly is the end. It's the conclusion. Wrap up your question. You don't want to find yourself re-explaining the same point. You want to make your point, conclude your response. And so there's that 5-step formula. It's listen, it's pause, it's confirm, tell it, and end it. Okay. So that's the formula that's offered. Beyond that, the Better Speaking series offers 4 different strategies that could be utilized in, again, impromptu speaking. And you think about it, again, from the standpoint of table topics, which we're most familiar with. The 4 different strategies are, number 1, express your opinion. That's a strategy to responding to the question. You ask a question about politics, and you have an opinion about politics. I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, I'm an independent, I don't care about politics, but you have a position, and you extend an opinion, and you express your opinion. A second strategy is to respond with cause and effect. Your response is that the reason that this happened is because this occurred. So there's a cause and there's an effect. And that's, again, a strategy that you can use in responding to a question on an impromptu basis. Another is to break the topic down or break the question down into logical components. I thought of a scenario where Michael, for instance, has kids that play sports. And he may come in contact with someone, or say John says, hey, I have a young kid that I want to get involved in sports. Michael, what's the best sport for a kid? Well, Michael could say, man, I'm a football fan, and I think football's the best thing for kids. Or he could say, you know what, there's a number of different sports that are good for kids. Soccer, basketball, baseball, football. And he could go into examining a little brief examination of each of those different sports. And then he could conclude it by expressing his opinion that says, you know what, this is a sport that I think might be best for your child. Or this is the order that maybe you should expose them to, and ultimately allow them to make their own decision about what sports they want to play. So there's an opportunity to kind of break down the question into different components and respond to it. And a last strategy is the strategy that's called discuss the past, the present, and the future. It's an opportunity to take the question, and if it's appropriate, look at that question from a historical perspective, look at that question and how it applies to today, and look at that question with regard to how will it apply into the future. So what we have is, again, 4 different strategies that could be applied when responding on an impromptu basis. Now, lastly, with regard to the speaking series, they offer 3 different points that are important to consider. Number 1, they said, be confident. Okay? It's your answer, whatever it is, so own it. And that will help with the enthusiasm. If you believe your answer, you're more likely to be energetic and be able to share it with confidence. So be confident. The second is be brief. Okay? It's an impromptu question. It's not necessarily or usually looking for a big expansive answer. So be focused, be brief. And thirdly, it's be sincere. People can tell when you're not telling the truth. People can tell when you're fumbling around for an answer. And so sometimes it's best to simply say, I don't know. Can you explain further? Or, I don't know the answer to that. Could you ask the next person? I can't give that one to my son because he uses it all the time. But you want to be sincere. Again, you're dealing with, in a lot of cases, people want to trust what it is that you're saying. And again, they can tell Now, that's the best speaking series, and that's their points. And as I looked at that and got the request from John, and then went to the website and looked and said, what are the different opportunities that I could speak on today? And I read through that, and I said, there's one thing that I felt like was missing from that. And it really, I think, falls into point one of the 3 points, be confident. You might be sitting there asking yourself, how do I get good at impromptu speaking? How do you do it? And so I looked at that, and I thought about that, and I said, there's really 3 keys. Number 1 is you got to practice. You have to practice. If you were to see me driving down the street, you would think there's this crazy guy in the car, because I listen to a lot of talk radio, political talk radio in particular, and I find myself talking to the radio. I'm either answering the question of the host or the callers called in, and I'm yelling at the callers, and that crazy question that you're asking. And very interactive, but it is for me a method of practicing the impromptu response. A second point or thought that I have is you got to get out of your comfort zone. It's really easy for us to, if I'm a hunter like John is, and I'm not an athlete like Michael is, that I don't want to talk about football. I don't want to talk about athletics. I just want to talk about hunting. Getting out of your comfort zone, though, might include, let me spend some time exposing myself to those things that I'm not familiar with. And what it does, knowledge, I'm a firm believer in knowledge breeds confidence. And so the more information that you get, a lot of it might end up being throwaway. You never use it. But there might be that one little piece that at some point you say, you know what? I'm reflecting back on that conversation I had with John and Michael or Jason that said this little piece about something I didn't know, and it allowed me to engage in the conversation. So get out of your comfort zone. But thirdly, and this was the piece that I think was probably the most important piece for me, and it's to observe. Now, I feel like I'm a very good person in this regard. And I'm not saying eavesdrop, but listen to the conversations that are going on around you. Keep your eyes peeled and watch what's happening in your environment. Because all of that is knowledge that you're taking in, and you'll be able to regurgitate it, if you will, when the time comes. And so, practice it, get out of your comfort zone, and be observant. So, Toastmasters really is encouraging us to expand our horizons. That's part of the reason why we're here, is to come out to learn how to better communicate. Impromptu speaking is an area that we are using on a daily basis, on a regular basis, and so they've offered us some techniques and some strategies that can help us improve in that area. Listen, pause, confirm, tell, end. That's a formula. It's a tried and true formula, so employ it. Strategies for responding to the impromptu question: express your own opinion. It's yours. Address cause and effect. Break it down into logical components. And discuss past, present, and future. Those are all different strategies that you can utilize to really make a smart impromptu response. Now, I want to tell you a short story about observe, again, which I thought was, really key for me. I used to work in radio. I was not on air, but I was a salesperson. One thing you might find, that you do find in a lot of sales organizations, particularly what we call local retail sales organizations, is that they have poor management. Okay? What happens in sales organizations is that the salesperson, the best salesperson, gets promoted to be sales manager. And see Tom's shaking his head. The best salespeople get promoted to be the sales managers, yet they're not often the best people person. People, they make a lot of money, but they don't necessarily know how to communicate with people, and certainly don't know how to manage other people. So I say all to say I had a sales manager who I really didn't like, but there was one thing that I walked away with after working under him for 2+ years. And that was, we went on a sales call one day, and we were in the office of a potential client. And when we walked into the office and the person we were meeting with wasn't there yet, my manager spent time walking around the room and just kind of looking. The walls were like blank, but there were little knickknacks here and there. He was really kind of getting a feel for the room. When the guy came in, we introduced ourselves and we had a little brief conversation. And then, as soon as the first opening that came, my sales manager asked him about fishing, which was one of the things that was on his wall. Now, I'm not a fisherman. I don't care about fish. I'm like Paul Ryan, don't feed the fish. And what occurred was he made a connection with that potential client who turned into a client rapidly thereafter, because the sale was more about the connection than it was anything that we had to sell versus our competitors. So really the thoughts are here that impromptu speaking